Throughout my 25 years skiing, I've been fortunate enough to go to 45 different ski resorts across 9 different states and 2 provinces up in Canada. In the past few years, I've created resort ranking videos based on the ski resorts that I went to the year prior. However, this last year, I never really went to anything new that I haven't already been to. So instead of making a final resort ranking video, I decided to take all of the mountains that I've personally been to and try to just pick out my top 10 favorite resorts based on a few qualifying criteria. Now, I've never skied overseas in places like Europe, New Zealand, or Japan. And in fact, I'm gonna put up a picture of all of the mountains that I've been to so you guys can pause this and actually see the mountains that I'm gonna be referring to. If I haven't been to a mountain personally, it will not be included in my top 10. A mountain that comes to my mind is something like Crested Butte. I'm sure that place is incredible, but I've personally never been there, so it's not gonna show up on this top 10 list. I'm only gonna be pulling from that sort of 45 bank that's listed on the screen. Resort rankings are extremely subjective. In an effort to somewhat combat this, I've came up with this formula that I'll refer to as the Stoke formula that includes 3 main variables. For me, what makes a resort highly ranked is the amount of snowfall they get, that quality of snow, and basically the type of terrain, the level of difficulty of the terrain that's available there. So this formula takes the average resort's snowfall multiplied by the terrain difficulty on a scale of 0 to 1. Most of these will fall anywhere from 7/10 to all the way up to a perfect score of 1. Then taking that product times a final miscellaneous number from 0 to 0.5, which includes things like the vertical drop, the farmability of the mountain, the ease of getting to the mountain, parking, the snow quality, things like that. It's kind of just like this one more subjective layer of a score, and basically all of these multiplied together will give us a final score. Now, the maximum score a mountain can receive is 274. This is taking the maximum average snowfall from Alta, which is around 550 inches, which is just bonkers, times a perfect score of 1 for the terrain, times the perfect score of 0.5 for the miscellaneous. Now, I recognize there are several shortcomings with this method, but like I mentioned, this is really just a subjective review. For the average snowfall, I went to each resort's homepage, like their actual website, and found the number that they claim is their average snowfall, because I felt like each place would elevate their own snow number. So rather than trying to pull from a third party that kind of aggregates this, I said, let's just go directly to the source and see what they say. I did find some discrepancies with a place like Big Sky, who they claim at 400 inches of snow a year, but a place like On the Snow says they get 276. So that is going to be one of the shortcomings, is what is their actual average snowfall per year. And most importantly, some of these resorts I've been to countless times, and other places like Big Sky, for example, I haven't. So I'm doing my best not to be impartial and biased in my review, but the reality is it is our own personal experiences that sort of shape our review and opinion of these mountains. But my hope is that these scores show you just how close these mountains really are to each other, and it truly is difficult for me to rank one over the other. Finally, it goes without saying, all of these resorts are incredible, and I encourage you to check them all out if you are able to. Don't be afraid to take the resorts that you've been to and try to list them out into your top 10, your top 5, your top 3, and leave them in the comments below. Give it a try, because it is not easy. Before we get in the actual list, I'm a sucker for honorable mentions, and there's a few that come off the top of my head that could be in this list, but they just did not make the cut. And this is Telluride in Colorado, Crystal Mountain in Washington, Grand Targhee in Wyoming, and Kirkwood in the Tahoe area of California. All of these have incredible terrain, but for one reason or the other, be it lack of snowfall or the quality of snow, it just didn't elevate them enough to crack into the top 10 compared to some of these other resorts. Finally, kicking off the list at number 10 is Aspen Snowmass in Aspen, Colorado. I have had the pleasure of skiing this resort more and more in the following previous years, and it really is a place that I'm enjoying myself at. There's 4 different mountains, from Aspen Highlands to Buttermilk to Aspen Snowmass to Aspen Ajax proper, which gives you a lot of different opportunities and options for terrain. If you want steep stuff, if you want park skiing, if you want that sort of ski into town feeling, Aspen Snowmass offers this for you. But with only 300 inches of snow on average a year and a less than sort of average level of difficulty of terrain, generally speaking, it did find its way on the low end of this list. However, the town of Aspen and sort of getting around, parking at different mountains is incredibly easy, and I find that every time I'm there, the lift lines are virtually non-existent. But that's not to be confused by saying that this mountain is not steep and gnarly by any means. both at Highlands and Snowmass has their fair share of incredible gnarly terrain with steeps, cliffs, drops if you're looking for it, but kind of kicking off our list and rounding out the top 10 is Aspen Snowmass. Number 9 on this list, and one that honestly was a lower score than I had thought it was going to be, is Big Sky in Montana. Big Sky is one of those places where I found some discrepancy. I didn't know if they received 400 inches of snow average, or is it 265, or do they fall somewhere in the middle? So going off their 400 inches a year, I do think that Big Sky has some of the most gnarly terrain in North America. The stuff that I was able to ski there was just like borderline psychotic in a way. I think one of the reasons that keeps Big Sky a little bit lower for me is just the general sort of inconsistency of it. I think in low snow years, Big Sky is very horrendous to try and ski because it's so rocky and steep. It's not a place you really want to spend your time at. Furthermore, it is an incredibly cold place being up in Montana, and I just think this sort of hinders the experience a little bit, trying to ski in sub-zero weather. I'm sure if you're a native Montanan, that's just like second nature for you, but I just found that some of these things, largely the inconsistency in snow and just temperatures of it, made this so it came in a little bit lower than I thought. But as I mentioned, the terrain at Big Sky is some of the best in really North America, best in the country. Number 8, we are heading west to California in the Truckee area at Palisades. Palisades is just one of like those holy grail places of big mountain freestyle skiing. It's kind of where a lot of this sort of stuff was birthed. It was one of the original places. So for that, it deserves a lot of respect. But personally for me, even though they do boast about 400 inches of snow a year, I find that you really don't get that really nice quality snow that you'll find in Utah and Colorado. It's kind of where the term Sierra Cement was born from. And even though it might snow a foot or something, it just isn't the same as a foot in Utah and Colorado. Furthermore, because the Sierras are such a gnarly mountain range, you will get these big storms, but the mountain typically is shut down during those periods because of high winds, high snowfall, and stuff like that. And then it feels like everyone in the Bay Area and Truckee go ski the mountain, and not only are you waiting in big lift lines, the stuff is essentially skied up in 45 minutes to an hour. So I'm sure this is just one of those cases where I haven't been to this mountain enough to truly know how to navigate it during these times, but for me, I just haven't always had the best of luck skiing these mountains. However, Palisades Tahoe, both with the Squaw Valley side and the Alpine Meadow side, has some incredible terrain, some of the gnarliest terrain I've ever been able to see and attempt to ski. But unfortunately, the snow quality, the lift lines, and just the general access and firmability of these places keep it a little bit lower on this list. Now these next 3 are virtually almost the same score, and number 7 is going to be taken by Jackson Hole in Wyoming. I'm sure many people will disagree with this, but like I mentioned, the scores are incredibly close. Jackson Hole gets a lot of snow each year with over 400 inches of snow on average, and it's usually that nice cold blower smoke that we know and love here in Utah. Additionally, it goes without saying, Jackson Hole has some of the most gnarly terrain, both inbounds and out of bounds, that you can find in the US. If you're a proponent of side country, backcountry stuff, I don't know if there is a better place than Jackson Hole to spend your days. Whether it's dropping cliffs under like the sublet chair, or if you really want to take the tram all the way up and ski Rendezvous Bowl and give your shot at Corbett's, there really is a lot of stuff for everyone. However, one of the things that just, again, keeps this a little bit lower for me personally is I find that if you don't get it on fresh snow days and storms, I just feel like the conditions can be a little bit unfavorable. Because of the way the sun hits the Tetons first thing in the morning, you get a lot of sun-baked snow that just sort of melts, refreezes, stuff like that during the day. So I just find that every time I've been there, sometimes the skiing conditions can be a little bit lackluster. Furthermore, I'm not a huge fan of how disconnected the mountain is from the actual town of Jackson Hole. I always thought that Jackson Hole was here and the mountain was basically right behind it. But it's quite a little bit of a drive to get to the mountain along this basically slow one-way type road to get there. So during periods of heavy traffic, both to and from the mountain, it can be difficult to get around. And not to mention the parking at Jackson Hole is quite expensive if you want to park right there at the mountain. If not, you're forced to kind of park miles away and then take a bus or shuttle system in. So while the terrain is great, the snowfall and snow quality is great, I just think it was some of these other nuances that ended up scoring Jackson a little bit lower than some might have hoped. Coming in number 6, not even a full point above Jackson, is Whistler Blackcomb, north of the border. Whistler is just one of those infamous places that I feel like is on everyone's bucket list for skiing, and for good reason. Whistler is another one that boasts over 400 inches of snow on average and has some of the most gnarly terrain you will find in North America. I think Whistler Blackcomb is one of the biggest mountains, if not the biggest, in North America at this point, with both the Whistler slide and the Blackcomb slide now connected together. With the recent construction updates of the Sea to Sky Highway, it really has never been easier to get to Whistler from Vancouver. I remember when I used to go to Momentum ski camps, the ski bumps up on the glacier, back then was just a 2-lane highway and could see some incredible delays with this sort of the lack of traffic flow. However, one of the things that really kept this lower on the score for me was, again, the general lift lines and quality of snow. It seems like everyone in the major city of Vancouver goes up to Whistler, and it just leaves you with a lot of lift lines, long lift lines, despite how big the mountain is. I'm sure this is another case of just not really knowing how to ski the mountain in the most efficient way. But for me personally, the lift lines have just sort of hampered the experience for me. Furthermore, I would expect to sit in sort of like this rain, sleet type snow on the bottom half of the mountain. Granted, this does turn into some great snow as you get up top. It's just one of those things that I'm not personally used to here in Utah with our nice dry snow. So this is not to take anything away from Whistler Blackcomb. Again, just isn't the place I'm necessarily going to spend if I go up to British Columbia to ski some steeps. Starting off the top 5 in a mountain that honestly surprised me, but also stoked me out because I was not expecting Mammoth Mountain to take number 5. Mammoth is no stranger to snow, and it's one of those places you see in the news a lot for, you know, a 6-foot, 10-foot storm cycle hit Mammoth, everyone's buried. And I think that's one of the things that makes Mammoth so cool. The mountain is incredible. It has this really vast, high alpine type feeling. It has really fun terrain from the Paranoid Flats, which is some steep, exposed type rock skiing, right out to some of the steepest trees I've been able to ski on the Dragon's Back, Dragon's Tail area off Chair 9. But I think one of the things that really helped elevate Mammoth above some of these other mountains is the all-encompassing 360 sort of macro type view that Mammoth offers. Not only is the town incredibly fun with restaurants, bars, stuff like that, it's also really easy for someone like me with a van to camp. You can basically hop the 395 and you're in national forest land, and there's places to actually stay and set up for the night. So not only can you camp in places that are beautiful and experience the Sierras at winter, you can basically just drive across the street and you're at Mammoth for an incredible mountain experience. One of the drawbacks of Mammoth is that it still has these really gnarly Sierra storms where you're greeted with really high winds. So a lot of times, even during storms, the upper mountains is closed, but Mammoth does a great job of trying to open up some of the lower mountains like Chair 22 to experience the avalanche chutes. So while these former 3 were all very close together, I think Mammoth is rightfully deserving of the number 5 spot. Inside the top 5 starts to get really serious, and these next 2 are literally separated by just a few points, again indicating just how hard it is to rank these in an objective order. But number 4 is going to be Kicking Horse Mountain Resort in Golden, British Columbia. This has been a mountain I have raved of in recent years as I've been able to spend more and more time here, and I truly think this mountain has the perfect terrain. It kind of is the holy grail benchmark of the terrain I like to ski. I haven't been to a place that has such steep shots that are exposed with cliffs, with drops, no fall zones as a place like Kicking Horse. The gondola there brings you up nearly 4,000 feet, I believe, and it basically drops you off at the top of the Purcell Mountains, and you're like, okay, which way do I want to go? Do I want to go to Redemption Ridge? Do I want to go to CPR Ridge? Do I want to go to the Ozone? Do I want to go over here? The options are truly endless. But Kicking Horse has the least amount of snowfall compared to any of the mountains on this entire list, which I think is what keeps this from being one of the best mountains in North America. However, something that I think helped boast and boost Kicking Horse above others is how easy it is to get to. You can basically fly to Calgary in a very short, easy drive. West, you'll end up in Golden, British Columbia, which is basically the base of Kicking Horse Mountain Resort. You can drive right to the parking lot, and within a few steps, you are on the gondola right up to the top of the mountain. For all the times I've been there, I've rarely ever waited in lift lines, and it just feels like it's a place that is forgotten about by a lot of people, and they either go to Whistler or they stay closer in Banff for the big 3 resorts over there. One of the drawbacks with a lot of this vert is I do feel like kind of the last third of the vertical is a little bit mellow. It's just kind of like cat tracking your way down the mountain, and you often go from nice dry snow to a little bit wet, thicker snow. So while they do boast a lot of vertical, I do feel like only about 2/3 of that is truly what you'll actually ski. Number 3 edges out Kicking Horse just by a very small margin, and this is taken over by its next door neighbor, Revelstoke in British Columbia. That was a mouthful, I don't know why I gaggled that, but Revelstoke, number 3. While I do think Kicking Horse holds the edge in a lot of areas like terrain difficulty and just general miscellaneous score, one of the things that I think elevates Revelstoke is that they just simply get a little bit more snow than Kicking Horse. This is not to take away from Revelstoke's incredible terrain and nearly 5,000 feet of vertical, and it does feel very similar to Kicking Horse in the sense where you can take the Stoke chair up, kind of hike your way along the back to North Bolt, and just be greeted with this endless opportunity of steep chutes, trees, cliffs. It's kind of like however gnarly you want to get, Revelstoke has it for you. However, similar to Kicking Horse, a lot of the vertical that they kind of propose and offer is a little bit, it's just not all totally skiable. A lot of times at the very base, it is raining on you, and it takes getting up to the top of the gondola really before it actually starts turning to snow. One of the main downfalls I find of Revelstoke is that it is really limited in the chairs. There's like literally one chair, the Stoke chair. And so everyone funnels to the Stoke chair, it takes you up, and then you kind of dissipate from there as to where you want to go. So in terms of how big the mountain is, it isn't the biggest out there, but it offers great terrain, this kind of raw, rugged, lawless type feeling, coupled with a heavy snowfall and just all around a really fun sort of iconic type British Columbia, pillows, cliffs, that type of stuff skiing, which just makes it hard to stay away from. But the great part is that Kicking Horse and Revelstoke are right next to each other, so you can go up, ski Kicking Horse, Revelstoke, and go back and forth and enjoy them both because they are both incredible mountains. The final 2 mountains are here, and if you're a follower of the channel, I'm sure it is no surprise, but number 2 is Alta in Little Cottonwood Canyon, all the way at the top. Alta, in my opinion, is the gold standard for amount of snowfall, for quality of snow. It doesn't get any better than Alta. They average nearly 550 inches of snow a year, which, just think about that for a second. That is an insane amount of snow. That is double than some of these places on this list, and that's just like it basically snows a few inches every single day from the time they open to the time they close. Alta has some of the most incredible terrain in the country that you could ask for, and I do think it is right on par with some of the best in the country. One of the things that kept this from being the number 1 spot is just the general access and lack of vertical, in my opinion. I know that there are some people who are diehard Alta fans who just swear by it, and I know there's people who are diehard Bird fans, its next door neighbor, and both are rightful for doing so. For me, I find that sometimes Alta requires a little bit more traversing and hiking around to get to, and I just really like the element of taking a tram up at the Bird and just skiing down from there. Lastly, for me personally, with a 2-wheel drive van, I find that Alta is just that much more difficult for me to get to, and it is way up nestled at the top of Little Cottonwood Canyon, which is arguably one of the most gnarly roads to drive in a snowstorm. A lot of times I'm doing all I can just to get to the Bird, and having to go that extra little bit up the access road just makes it so it's easier for me just to go to the Bird. Not to mention you have that much more distance to travel, both to get up to Alta and then also getting down at the end of the day. But this was very hard to put one over the other, and I do think they are essentially interchangeable, and honestly they share the same exact terrain. With the right pass, you can ski between Alta and its next door neighbor, and it just kind of goes to show that they almost are, in a sense, one and the same type resorts. I'm probably get crucified for saying that, but in my opinion, it's kind of true. And it is no surprise if you are a follower of the channel, Snowbird, just below Alta and Little Cottonwood Canyon, is my number 1. They don't have as much snow as Alta, but they still get 500 inches of snow, which again is incredible. I would say their terrain is pretty much on par with Alta, but something that just separates it, gives it that little extra flavor for me, is the tram. I love the tram. I love waiting in the tram line. I love loading 110 people into this little cab car and just riding up for 8-9 minutes to the top of Hidden Peak. The smells, the music, everything, it just kind of prepares you in a way that I haven't really gotten on a regular chairlift. You know, everyone is stoked. You're looking at your lines, you're looking at the snow you're about to ski. And it just kind of creates this few minutes of solace where you're just with other people who are there to share the stoke just like you are. So for me, that's simply the reason why this takes number 1. I think you get off the tram, you have places like the Cirque, High Baldy, Mineral, the Gad Valley. Your options really are endless. As if rising 3,000 feet of vertical isn't enough, you get a true 3,000 foot descent on the way back down. It isn't like you ski 1,500 feet of vertical, then you have another 1,500 feet of cat track. It truly is fully expert extreme skiing for 3,000 feet. So you can do 6, 7, 8 tram laps in a day and be absolutely spent and be tested from top right down to the tram deck. And finally, as I mentioned, with Alta, it's just a little bit easier for me personally to get to. It is a little bit lower in the canyon. I do think they do a great job with the access to the parking lots and stuff like that. And it's just, for some reason, every time I say I'm gonna go to Alta, I end up just turning off to Snowbird instead, parking there, putting the skis on and skiing down to the tram deck. So it's just a place that I've probably spent the most time at in recent years. It's definitely been weighted to the bird over other places. But like I mentioned, Alta, Snowbird, like you really can't go wrong. Just being up in Little Cottonwood Canyon, in my opinion, is the best skiing in the country. Well, putting those in order was honestly no easy feat because it did kind of pain me to put some resorts where I did. At the end of the day, that is my list. I've reviewed this a few times. Dude, I have calculations here. Snowfall times this times that, so I put some thought into this, you know, but it's not easy to actually rank one or the other. These would all be basically S tier type resorts if I had to put them in a general ranking, but I do think it is fun to try to put some substance behind these numbers and rank them one over the other. So let me know what your ranking numbers are, how you would rank your resorts. And yeah, just thanks for watching. I know I'm probably going to get some hate for this or some comments saying L rankings, but just is what it is. So there's no perfect ranking. And all these resorts are incredible. So that's enough for me. I'll see you guys all in the next video. Hopefully you're getting stoked to get on the skis. I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy, fam. Peace out.